So on the last episode of the Ultimate Collector's Guide, we covered the Ultimate Wizard in Attack and Defense. In today's video, we're going to be covering the face of the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise, the Blue Eyes White Dragon. We're going to be covering every single artwork that this card received, as well as every rarity that these artworks came in. We're going to be talking about what makes each one so special, as well as which ones do collectors favor the most. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so we definitely have to start off with the most nostalgic artwork of all, the one that we all saw on a TV show, and this is what I call the anime artwork. The first appearance of this artwork came in what is still considered today as the highest rarity for this card, and that is the DDS Blue Eyes White Dragon that came out of the video game. The DDS Blue Eyes is arguably one of the most liquid cards in the game. This card has so much demand, it's actually kind of insane. To me, I never actually saw it as a child. I was more of a SDK peasant, so I didn't really get to ever see what a DDS Blue Eyes looks like until way later on. And because of this, I never really understood the hype. But now that I've been in the market for so long and I understand just what people value the most in collectibles, I can definitely tell you that the DDS Blue Eyes is worth every single penny in any sort of condition. You'll find moderately played, heavily played copies of this card selling way faster than near mint, mint, or gem mint copies of other Blue Eyes White Dragons. The fandom behind this card is truly legendary, and even as an SDK fanboy, I can do nothing but hang up my hat and say, look, the community favors you and there's literally nothing that we can do or say about it. The DDS Blue Eyes is by far the most sought after Blue Eyes White Dragon. It's not the most expensive, but it's definitely the one that's most in demand. In terms of price for this card, it sells for around $300 to $400 in heavily played condition. Gem mint condition sells for around $8,000, and then near mint to mint sells for around $2,000 to $3,000, depending on like how nice it is. This card is Japanese cardstock, so the population on it is quite high in PSA 9s and 10s. But like I said earlier, the demand is so crazy that it can keep up with things that have the population of 50 to 60. In terms of alternatives to this card, there really isn't anything that has come out yet. However, we do have the 2023 Ultimate Kaiba set. If you haven't seen my video, I would definitely recommend you check it out here. I cover all things that have to do with this case, as well as if it's going to be a good investment or not. But anyway, in this case, Konami stated that we're going to be receiving 3 copies that are very similar to the Prismatic secret rare that we got in the DDS Blue Eyes. This is going to be the first alternative that we get in the TCG since 2002. However, I do believe it's going to look a little bit different because most likely the stars and the attribute sign would be hollow foil, just like how we got it on the Adidas Dark Magician. So that will be a great alternative when it does come out for a lot of the collectors that are looking for a prismatic copy of this card but can't afford the DDS Blue Eyes. There is also one more alternative, and that's the Spanish DOR version. So on the Spanish side, they received a Duelist of the Roses game. On the TCG side, we'd normally get Beta, Alpha, and Gamma as the Magnet Warrior promos inside, but on the Spanish side, they received a reprint of the Blue Eyes White Dragon in the Spanish language. I don't really think it rivals the DDS at all because again, it's foreign, but I figured I'd mention it just in case you're trying to collect every single version of the DDS Blue Eyes. Alright, so that's the biggest one as well as the most expensive anime artwork Blue Eyes White Dragon. The next one is the runner-up right behind it, and that's the one that most people recognize. It's the most nostalgic card, and that is the SDK-001. This is the starter deck Kaiba, and this card came out in first edition and unlimited, obviously. Now for this card, the first edition is by far the one that you should be trying to collect. I highly do not recommend you go after the unlimited versions because this card was printed like crazy in unlimited. There is so much out there. I would even argue like there's as much as unlimited base set Charizard. And if you know Pokemon, you know that's a crazy high number of reprints. Now me personally, I would definitely pick the SDK first edition over the DDS Blue Eyes. However, in my experience, the market has definitely not agreed with me. The market definitely favors the DDS Blue Eyes in all conditions, and it is way more liquid than the SDK first edition. I just love the more ancient look of the SDK Blue Eyes, if that makes sense. The colors are a little bit more muted. They're not as juicy as on the DDS Blue Eyes, so it just looks a little bit more ancient per se. Plus, it has what's called the glossy cardstock, which I will be covering in a future video. This cardstock, in my opinion, is the best cardstock ever used on any trading card game. The fact that SDK First Edition got this and it's exclusive to that, I mean, it's a no-brainer in my opinion. This is a must-have staple in your Blue Eyes collection. Now, the SDK Blue Eyes represents the anime artwork in the ultra rare rarity. However, there are some alternatives to this card. If you can't afford the first edition, there's always the unlimited. But let's just say you don't want unlimited, you want something a little bit more collectible. I would recommend the version that came out in Duelist Saga. This card has a lot of identity because it's an ultra rare, but it has very specific foiling that is only released in Duelist Saga. For some reason, the Duelist Saga Ultra Rares look a little bit different than regular cards, and I think that is kind of a unique feature to those cards that give them a lot of identity. If you can't swing for the Unlimited or the Duelist Saga version, there is the CT13, which is a little bit cheaper. It's also an ultra rare, but obviously it's not as unique because it's just a tin promo. And if this is still not in your budget, there is one last copy that I recommend, and that is the Legendary Collection Kaiba, which came out in 2018. This card is very affordable, it's very budget friendly. The only problem that I have with this card is that the stars and the attribute sign are holographic, so it does take a little bit away from that nostalgic look. So if I was you, I would recommend that you save up and get yourself an older copy of the Unlimited version or the Duelist Saga, and then if you have the budget, I would highly recommend you swing at the SDK First Edition copy. That card is truly the most nostalgic for most collectors out there. Alright, so that's the ultra rare representation of the anime art. Next we have the super rare, which doesn't really have a lot of options. The one I'd recommend, and in my opinion is right up there as a top 5 Blue Eyes in the anime artwork, and that is the Duelist Pack Kaiba First Edition. I highly recommend you guys go for the first edition only of this card. The main reason is because the alternative, which is the Unlimited, was printed like crazy. It was printed to hell and back. There's so much out there, and in my opinion, I think it loses a lot of that flavor once it becomes so saturated like this. I would definitely say save up a little bit, get the first edition. I would say the first edition goes for like $50 to $80. If you really want a nice copy, you're gonna pay around $100, but I would say you can probably get a near mint for around $75. This card really looks unique compared to the other Blue Eyes White Dragons. It does have UDE cardstock for the first edition, so that's a huge plus. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's this video here for that. But the only issue I have with this card is because it's a super rare, it's prone to reprints. Konami obviously treats super rares like nothing anymore, and unlike before where super rares meant a lot, today they're pretty much just bulk. So I would be cautious of that. However, you're still protected by that first edition stamp. You're protected by the fact that it doesn't have hollow foil stars or attribute sign. So I would definitely give this one a thumbs up if you need to add it to your binder collection. Next up is the gold rare version of the anime artwork, and I'd recommend you just leave this one to the side. I cannot stand this card. It's just not for me. I'm not going to say too much. It's very cheap. It doesn't have alternatives. Pick it up if you really want to, but I would say just stay away. It's not that nice. Next is the Ghost Rare Blue Eyes, and in my opinion, I think this one's actually quite nice. The only problem is the printing quality of this card. So if you were around last year, you would know that Ghost from the Past 2 was pushed a couple of months later because there was an issue with the printing. Well, the issue was the Blue Eyes, and for some reason it would just get some sort of like ink blotches on the artwork. If you can find a copy that doesn't have these, I highly recommend you pick one up. We haven't really got another sort of Ghost Rare like this one. I think it's a staple for any Blue Eyes collection, and in my opinion, I think the price that it goes for is pretty competitive. It goes for around like $100 to $150. Just make sure you avoid the ink blotches, and then you try to get yourself a nicely centered one because a lot of them are off center. But that's pretty much every single representation for the anime artwork in the TCG. Now I want to get to what I would call the LOB artwork, and that is the first appearance of Blue Eyes in the whole card game. So the DDS Blue Eyes was the first appearance of the anime artwork. That was in mid-March 2002. The LOB artwork predates the video game by about 2 weeks, and that was released in the beginning of March 2002. This is the first time we saw the Blue Eyes White Dragon appear in general. It's actually the first time we saw Yu-Gi-Oh cards in general on the TCG side for the mass release, and this is the base set of all Yu-Gi-Oh cards. The LOB Blue Eyes, in my opinion, opinion, is the Alpha and the Omega. It's the card, it's the prime mover of the Yu-Gi-Oh card game as a collectible. And this card in first edition high grades has such a huge premium on top of every other Yu-Gi-Oh card, and that's because it cross-pollinates with other TCG investors. So MTG investors, Pokemon investors, pretty much all of the high-end investors in these other hobbies, they try to pick up the LOB first edition Blue Eyes in PSA 9 and 10. So the jump for the price of this card is astronomical, and it doesn't operate under the same umbrella as other Yu-Gi-Oh cards. The PSA 10 version of this card goes for around $30,000 to $40,000, and then a raw copy is pretty much around $2,000 to $3,000 for like a nice light play to near mint copy. PSA 9s are around $6,000 to $7,000, and this card has two versions, the wavy and the glossy, which like I said have a video coming up on them. So this being the first Blue Eyes and first appearance, obviously like I said, it commands a high price. So if you're looking for some alternatives, the first one that I would recommend is the Retro Pack 1 Blue Eyes White Dragon. In this artwork in Ultra Rare, this is probably the second biggest chase card for the Blue Eyes White Dragon. The problem with Retro Pack 1 though is that it's a European exclusive. So because of this, it doesn't have that North American culture to it, if that makes sense. Like, it will always have that asterisk beside it that says, oh, this is not North American. But collectors don't really seem to mind. So this card goes for around $700 to $800 in light play near mint condition. And I would definitely say that this is the second highest valuable card in terms of Blue Eyes and Ultra Rare in this artwork. But let's just say you don't have the money for something like this. What I would recommend is the next best thing, which is the LOB Unlimited. There is the regular version Unlimited, which I don't recommend. And then there's the original 2004-2005 LOB-EN. The LOB Unlimited as well as the LOB-EN are much cheaper versions of the original Blue Eyes. They won't have the same gritty texture to them like the original does in first edition, obviously, but it's the next best thing if you can't afford thousands of dollars on Yu-Gi-Oh cards, right? Those range from like $30 all the way up to like $150 depending on condition. And if that's still not within your budget, then I would recommend the Kaiba Collector Box. This version of the Blue Eyes is a lot newer, so it's very affordable, and it's a nice ultra rare rarity. You'll be able to pick it up for fairly cheap. But that's the king of the Yu-Gi-Oh hobby. That's the ultra rare LOB art. Let's move on to some other variants that were released later. The next release for this card was in Secret Rare, and that was released 3 times in that old Duel Monsters era. The first one was BPT-003. This card is truly gorgeous, and I highly recommend it to any Blue Eyes collector. The only problem I have with this one is the limited edition tramp stamp, but otherwise I think it's fantastic. It has that old gritty 2002 card stock. It looks amazing, and it's head and shoulders above every other Secret Rare printing that ever came out. This card goes for around $100 to $150, and then in gem mint condition can hit all the way up to $1,000. It's fairly difficult to grade, and it has 2 versions, the regular foiling as well as the reverse foiling, which I covered in this video here. If you can't afford this type of price tag for the BPT-003, the 2 recommendations that I have is BPT-009, which came out a year later, and then there's the FL1-EN001. I personally like the look of the FL1 more than I would like the look of the BPT-009, but the 009 came out earlier, so if you're like, earlier the better type of cat, then I would recommend the 9. If you don't really care and you just care about the aesthetic, then I would recommend the FL1 version. And if you really can't swing any of those prices, because those do range in like the $30 to $50 mark, I would recommend the CT14, which came out much later and it has a much cheaper price tag. But those are the Secret Rare releases of the Blue Eyes White Dragon LOB art. Now let's get into the Super Rare release, which was introduced in the Starter Deck Kaiba Evolution. This card is a dime a dozen. You will find it everywhere. I honestly don't recommend you even picking it up unless you're getting it in first edition, and even then I would still say like you can probably put the money elsewhere and do better. The card does not look that good. It's pretty much made to be an ultra rare or a secret rare in my opinion. I don't think it actually looks good in any other rarity. There is one more variant for this card, and that is the DLG1, which is the reprint set that came out in 2008. This card is actually quite difficult to find, but again, I don't think this card was made to be a super rare. It just doesn't look that good in my opinion. But if you must have a super rare variant, I would recommend the DLG1 over the SKE. I know it came later, but that one is much rarer than the SKE version. So that's super rares. Now I want to cover rares, and you might be asking yourself, why am I covering rares? Like, who cares about those? Well, the main reason is because this artwork actually got something called a Duelist League release, and this means that it actually got a pretty cool gimmick to it. So what happened in 2010 was DL1, or the Duelist League cards, which were promotional cards that were handed out at Duelist Leagues, certain cards would get 4 variants that have different color text for the name. Well, this was one of them, and this got 4 different font colors. They were bronze, blue, green, as well as silver. I highly recommend you take a look at the blue one as well as the silver one, because they look pretty amazing in my opinion. These don't have any alternatives, but if you're trying to collect every Blue Eyes, these 4 are must-haves. Next, we have the gold rare. This was released like a few years back. Just like the anime artwork, toss this one. You don't need it in your collection. I promise you, you'd be better off without it. There's no alternatives for that either, thank God. The last important release for this card is the recently released Pharaoh's rare, which came out about 6 months ago. This card is very rare for what it is. I actually think it's kind of underrated for how little it's pulled. These cards are pretty much just a notch below Starlight rare in terms of difficulty to pull, and yet they go for way cheaper. This is a must-have in your personal collection if you're collecting every Blue Eyes, in my opinion, and it's decent. Like, the look is not amazing, but it's so difficult to pull that I would recommend you just pick one up for your collection and just stash it away. It's around 150 bucks. There are no alternatives, and the box price for this thing are constantly rising. So I would recommend you pick one up while you can, because it's quite a unique version of the LOB art. But that pretty much rounds up every single LOB version. Now I want to get to the Blue Eyes version of the tablet artwork, and this one is just like the Dark Magician. This is probably the most hated artwork by most collectors, and for some reason it's the most loved artwork by Konami. They love reprinting this card. This card pretty much has every single rarity, so let's just start with the first appearance, and that is Prismatic rare. This is the only other Prismatic Blue Eyes that exists in the TCG, and this one came out in Power of Chaos Kaiba. This card goes for around 100 to 200 bucks. The sealed packet could be had for around $200 to $300. It's a really beautiful artwork in Prismatic rare, but other than that, I really don't have too much more to say. It's not my favorite artwork, as you can tell. There are no variants though, so you will have to go with this copy if you want a Prismatic version. The second release for this artwork is in ultra rare, and that was with Dark Beginning 1. This card is fairly cheap. It's around 20 bucks, maybe $30 for a really nice copy. And in terms of alternatives, I think it's kind of cheap already for what it is, but if you really can't afford the 20 to 30 bucks, then I would recommend the Legendary Collection version, which you can pick up for a couple of dollars. The next release for this artwork was in the Dual Terminal release. So this is the Parallel Rare rarity. This card is dumb rare. I mean, it's super expensive. It's around 500 to 600 bucks. Sometimes it can hit in the thousands if you have a near mint to mint or a gem mint copy. But this only applies to the preview version, which is coded DTP1, and that's not to be confused with DTO1, which is the second and major release, which is not rare at all and can be easily found. And the DTO1 version is what I would recommend if you can't find or afford the DTP one. There is a Hidden Arsenal Collection one, but I don't think that you should go for that. I think if you have the money, I'd recommend the DTO1. Spare yourself from the modern reprint that is the Hidden Arsenal Collection. The next release is the Ghost Share variant of the tablet artwork. That one is GLD5. This is kind of like a gold ghost version. I'm not a fan whatsoever. I don't like it at all, but people seem to like it and it goes for a huge amount of money. This one has no alternatives, so if you want a Ghost Share version of this artwork, you're gonna have to go with this one. Then we come to the Ultimate Rare version of the tablet artwork, and like I said, this thing got pretty much every rarity you can think of. This Ultimate Rare version came out in the starter deck, so it's actually quite available. It's the only time they used Ultimate Rare in starter decks, and I think it's actually quite good looking. I actually think it's a little bit undervalued. Granted, there are a lot of them out there. I think you can get them for like 20, maybe 30 bucks for a first edition near mint. But I would definitely recommend you stick to near mint and not unlimited, because the unlimited is printed to hell and back. And obviously that's the only alternative to the first edition. There is also a secret rare version for this artwork. This card was released in the Speed Duel set and it is truly gorgeous. If you're a budget collector, you're trying to pick up a nice, clean, crispy secret rare, this is the one that I would recommend. You can get it for probably under 10-15 bucks and it is a huge bargain for how good it looks. The last rarity that I think is really important for this card is the quarter century rare, which was released this year. This card was a promo inside of the legendary collection and you can get it for around like 10 bucks, and because it's new, it's in pretty great shape already. So that's pretty much every wide release Blue Eyes White Dragon in the tablet artwork. Now I want to get to a similar card, but it has a little bit of difference, and that's what I call the Earth artwork. So for the Earth artwork, we have basically it's the same Blue Eyes White Dragon, same framing, same everything. It's just instead of the tablet in the back, we have the Earth, and then you also see a beam in his mouth. I highly favor this artwork over the other one. I think it looks a lot better than the tablet artwork, and I love the beam in his mouth. The first release for this artwork was in Ultra Rare, and it was in the Jump magazine, and it was closely followed by an EN version, so it's the same code JMP-EN001, and that was an exclusively European release. I highly recommend both of these versions for your collection because number one, they look very good. They look very vintage. They have that old cardstock that we used to love in 2002, 2003. But also, it's the first release of this card. And not only that, there hasn't been too many reprints of this. So there isn't like a secret rare variant or anything like this. The ultra rare is the prime variant for now. And every other reprint of this artwork, they just don't look as good as the JMP one. But if you really can't afford the JMP version, then I would recommend the structure deck version, and that one is much cheaper. You'll be able to get a nice ultra rare version of this card for your binder. The second and most important rarity for this artwork, in my opinion, is the one that's going to be coming out this year in the Ultimate Kaiba set TCG version. I made a video dedicated to this set, so I would recommend you check it out here. But this card will be releasing as a quarter century secret rare. I think it's going to be badass, and I'm definitely going to be picking it up. We don't know too much else about this, so that's all we really know, but I would imagine it's going to be around $25 to $30, and there's obviously not going to be any alternatives. So those were the major reprints of the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Every reprint pretty much was housed in these artworks. Now we're going to get to the ones that are pretty exclusive to the sets that they came in, and they never really got any cheaper variants. The first one is, in my opinion, probably like the best Blue Eyes in terms of identity. I actually like it just as much as DDS, just as much as SDK, and I did a video exclusively on this set, and that is the YAP Blue Eyes White Dragon. First of all, just look at this artwork, okay? Like, just look at this thing, man. It is gorgeous. But not only that, this came out to celebrate 10-year anniversary for Yu-Gi-Oh! It also came out in its exclusive pack. It was guaranteed inside the pack, and it was short printed. So like, the pack is dumb expensive, and the best part is that we got no reprints of this. There's no cheaper variants. This is the only way you can get this card. But wait, there's even more. This card was exclusively drawn by Kazuki Takahashi himself, and it's signed on the bottom right of the artwork. Like, honestly, what more could you ask for? This is one of the best releases of all time from Konami, and I highly recommend it to any Blue Eyes collector. This is a must-have. This card is also pretty terrible cardstock, so it's very difficult to grade. I'm pretty sure it's under Pop 10, and the PSA 10 version is easily $1,000. There's obviously no variants as it was never reprinted, so it's extremely exclusive and very collectible. It's a must-have. I highly recommend you look it up right now and grab one for your collection. So that's the YAP art. Now I want to get to another one that was drawn by Kazuki Takahashi himself exclusively for the Shonen Jump promos. So this is the one that's like Blue Eyes in space. We can call it the space art. He's basically flying in space. It was drawn by Kazuki Takahashi and signed by him as well, like I said earlier. And this card is a fan favorite as well. This one, just like the YAP, is an ultra rare, and it is exclusive to the Jump magazine. However, this one does have two variants. The first one was released in 2014 and it's coded JUMP-EN068. The re-release of this was in 2016 and it's coded JMPS-EN002. They are pretty much identical. The only difference is you'll see that the limited edition was shifted to the bottom, while on the original it was kept at the top. And obviously there is no other rarities or other variants of these cards other than these two. Next up we have the movie art. This one is a pretty big fan favorite. The only issue this card has is that there was no high rarity version. I really hope that they re-release it in some sort of Starlight Rare or something like this, because it really does deserve it. It's extremely beautiful, it looks fantastic, and this was debuted in 2016 as an ultra rare. This is probably the most collectible version of this card since it's the rookie card as well as it's the hardest to grade, but it was released as a secret rare as well as a gold secret rare or something like that. That one is like way too much bling, but I would say the secret rare and the ultra rare are the ones to go for. The ultra rare for collectability and then the secret rare for aesthetic, because the secret rare on this one is like nuts. I highly recommend you check it out, and you can have them for so cheap. They're like under $5. Because again, they were so mass printed, there is no high rarity version of them. I highly recommend you check them out and add them to your Blue Eyes collection. Alright, so that's the movie artwork. Now I want to get to the latest release, the latest artwork, and this one is like, this one's so puzzling to me. This is what I would call the manga artwork. Now, like if you've seen this Blue Eyes, like it is so ugly, man. I don't understand why Konami chose to use this artwork. Like there are so many Blue Eyes White Dragon artworks in the manga. I don't know why they went with this one. This looks like some grotesque lizard, man. It's so terrible. And to make matters worse, they released it in the Megaton with like one of the worst rarities I have ever seen. It's like this bootleg prismatic rare. Yeah, like I don't know, man. I don't know what they were thinking. The Dark Magician Girl from this set came out great. The Red Eyes is okay, but this Blue Eyes, man, this is a huge miss. I mean, you have to have it because it's a unique artwork, but I would honestly say if you really want this artwork, I would grab the Japanese representation which came out in the History Archive collection. This one is an ultra rare, but it's way cleaner. The hollow foil looks way better. I would honestly recommend you go with that one. The TCG version of this Blue Eyes is a no-go. But rent aside, I would say like the price range for this one is like 15, maybe 20 bucks. And you can get it in really good condition without having to search too much. Obviously, because it recently came out, it also has no variants. So those are all of the English artworks that were ever released in the TCG. And this is pretty much every prominent rarity that they ever came out in. Some honorable mentions that I want to talk about are the Japanese releases. The first one that I would recommend is the starter box Blue Eyes White Dragon. This is the first proper Blue Eyes that was released by Konami. So just historically, it has its place. I covered the starter box in this video here. The second version that I want to talk about is the Jump Festa, which I also covered in this video. This is probably like the holy grail Blue Eyes. There's really nothing that comes above this. There's the P-Sec Blue Eyes, which is the Prismatic Secret Rare. This is the Starlight Rare version of the Blue Eyes White Dragon, which I covered in this video here. There's also the 20th Anniversary Blue Eyes White Dragon, which is a Starlight with red text. And then last but not least, there is the most beautiful Blue Eyes of all, and that is the ultimate rare SM51 from Spell of Mask. This is by far one of the most beautiful Blue Eyes ever made, and I don't think it will ever get topped in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! It was printed quite a bit, so there are a lot of them, but this card carries such a huge premium because people collect pages and pages of exclusively just this card. That is all there is to know about the Blue Eyes White Dragon. This is every single version that I would recommend you pick up for your Blue Eyes collection. I have my binder already completed. I want to know if you guys have yours. Let me know your thoughts and let me know if I missed anything. Are you a Blue Eyes collector? Are you an exclusive archetype collector? It's one of my favorite things to collect. I love having a binder of just Blue Eyes White Dragons or a binder of just Dark Magicians. Is this something that you're about as well, or are you more of a set guy? But yeah, that's honestly it. If you like this video and want to let me know that you want more of this type of content, you can hit the like button and comment down below. You can subscribe as well if you want to see future Yu-Gi-Oh! Collector based content. And if you want to support me further, I have a Patreon and you can pick up your own Gardner binder that I make myself with your own Blue Rain Spectrum sleeves, they go incredibly well with any Blue Eyes collection. I promise you, you'll be blown away. But that's it from me. I hope you guys enjoyed and I hope you learned something. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.